Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to some news regarding the latest changes to the 2021 calendar. Now coming up, I'll go over the news about the Turkish Grand Prix and after that take a look at some of the races that could also be under threat later in the year. But let's start, shall we, with today's news then, and the Turkish Grand Prix, which was drafted in to replace a cancelled Canadian Grand Prix, has itself now been called off. The writing looked on the wall for the event following the UK government's announcement that Turkey had been added to the country's travel red list, casting immediate doubt on the event as team personnel, most of whom of course are based in the UK, would have had to quarantine for 10 days in a government-approved hotel upon their return to the country, and that's not something the sport was keen on. And now, after a few days of speculation, F1 bosses have confirmed that the race will not be going ahead for now at least, just 16 days after it was announced as Canada's replacement. That has obviously resulted in a calendar reshuffle of the next few events, with a second Grand Prix at the Red Bull Ring being slotted in to fill the gap, and it will once again be known as the Styrian Grand Prix. So, following Baku on June 6th, there will be a 1-week break with the French Grand Prix moving forward now by a week to June 20th. That will be the start of a new triple header with the Styrian Grand Prix coming in to take France's original spot on June 27th. And 1 week later, the Austrian Grand Prix will go ahead as originally scheduled on July 4th. Long story short, Baku, week off, France, Styria, and then Austria. That is it for Turkey then, although it will be interesting to see if it becomes available again later in the year should there need to be another reshuffle. And apparently it has been discussed between F1 and the promoter that they will look at potentially rescheduling the event later in the year if possible or if needed. But on the subject of the rest of the season, what other races are currently at risk of being called off for 2021? Well, first up, the good news. The general consensus seems to be that unless there is a drastic change to the current situation globally, all the races up to the summer break should go ahead without any issue. The biggest question around those is likely to be whether or not fans will be allowed to attend. And with Monaco welcoming 7,500 fans next weekend and Silverstone still hoping to bring in a big crowd in July, for example, it's very possible others will follow. It is also likely that the Belgian and Italian races will go ahead in September as things stand. But there is a very small question mark over the Dutch Grand Prix, as organisers have been adamant in the past that the race at Zandvoort will only go ahead if fans are allowed to attend. So whilst COVID restrictions may allow that event to go ahead, it may still get called off if F1 wants it to be held behind closed doors. One positive for the Netherlands, though, is that the Eurovision Song Contest next weekend will have a live audience in the arena, and other events have taken place too, with 5,000 present for the Netherlands World Cup qualifier a couple of weeks ago. Therefore, assuming, of course, things continue as they are, it seems very likely we will see fans in a grandstand at Zandvoort. That said, and if the last 12 months has taught us anything, it's that things can change very quickly. Russia went ahead last year, so I'd be surprised if it didn't happen again in 2021, which means the major question marks currently sit around the Asia leg of the calendar, namely Japan and Singapore. Japan in particular currently has some tight restrictions in place which could cause F1 some problems. And the America leg could also be in doubt as the Mexican and Brazilian Grand Prix have both been at risk for a while now due to their struggles with the pandemic, with Brazil, of course, currently on the UK's red list, and although tickets have gone on sale for the US Grand Prix, there does seem to be a feeling that F1 bosses may be reluctant to travel to America for just one round of the championship. Then again, if the races in Brazil and Mexico do fall, perhaps COTA could host 2 events to help fill that void, and I suppose as that would keep F1 personnel in the country for a couple of weeks, it might actually help with any potential travel restrictions when they move on to the next round, but that is just a thought for now. And despite already being rescheduled to November, Australia is also at risk as borders remain closed to international travel and strict travel restrictions and hotel quarantine rules could remain in place until 2022 according to ministers. And so therefore, F1 would need to be handed an exemption if it wanted the race to go ahead at Albert Park, and that's not a given. And those restrictions were, of course, the reason the race was rescheduled in the first place. Essentially, to kind of sum all of that up, and very much as we predicted when the calendar was published, it is the back end of the season that currently looks set to give F1 a major headache. And that's not even to mention the fact that China is still officially, at least, only postponed. Although it is expected that will be cancelled outright eventually. All of that said, though, it is only May and there is a long time between now and, say, Australia in November, so things could easily change. Of course, if any of these races do get called off, the sport will need to dip into its contingency plan and find a replacement, and it is widely believed that the likes of Mugello, Hockenheim and the Nürburgring are on the list of standby venues, and we could also see Turkey return if things improve, and the doubling up of some events is also a strong possibility. It should also be said that with F1 returning to the Middle East at the back end of the year, a return to Bahrain could also be an option, maybe another go around the outer loop. Yes, please. Now, to look at the other side of this very briefly, with 23 races still on the calendar, you could argue that losing one or two might not be the end of the world for the sport. However, after a shortened season last year, F1 seems very keen to protect the integrity of the championship and help to protect the future and the finances of the teams within it. So there is a real appetite to get all 23 in this season. And I think if it's doable, that is absolutely the right thing to do. It's going to be tough, no doubt. However, I don't think many expected F1 to pull off a 17-race season in the middle of a global pandemic, yet they did it, and with minimal interruption once that schedule was all put together. But whilst I do fully expect we will see the full 23 races this season, being realistic, the latest round of changes are unlikely to be the last we see in 2021. That is it for this one then, but I will be back next week with some build-up to the Monaco Grand Prix. Apologies, by the way, for the lack of content this week. I am not going to bore you with the details, but normal service, whatever that is for this channel, will resume next week. In the meantime, though, if you did enjoy this video, then please do leave a like as it really helps out the channel, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future uploads. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.